So we have finally hit the long-awaited episode of Game of Thrones, The Long Night. So I love in this episode, they went right into it, having been that episode 2 was all set up for this. They wasted no time, and they built tension so well right from the top. Just doing one tracking shot through Sam and then Tyrion and getting you right away in this mindset of pretty much everyone of being terrified and fear is building up. And there's just an eerie quiet going on here throughout this opening sequence. And they really did a good job at just setting that tone and how dark this was, being possibly the end of the world. And I really just love how they panned through the layout of this battle, showing you the Dothraki were going to be on the front of the lines, with the Northerners in the middle and the Unsullied as the last line of defense in front of the castle. And what really worked for me in this episode was there was a ton of point of view shots from different characters, and it really got you in the sense of what each character was feeling in their different situations and really put you in the middle of this battle. And a nice surprise they had here was Melisandre showing up right in time. And it was perfect that we saw the entrance from Davos's point of view, because that reminds us again of the horrible thing Melisandre did to the little princess that he does not forget about. And it also effectively sets up that she would have this whole episode be her little mini redemption arc. And that starts right from her lighting the Dothraki swords, which was really cool, and how amazing that looked, where each sword was getting lit from the shot from Sansa and Arya's point of view, and you see it go across like a sea. That was spectacular. The pyrotechnics on the show are always amazing, and this was just another game-changing episode with that. And this was already a little sign of hope. That's what was so great about this whole battle, was they perfectly balanced from feeling no hope to hope and back and forth like a seesaw so well. So it was really just messing with your emotions. And then another great shot was just from Jon and Dany, where they're looking out at the Dothraki going in now, and you see these little lights in the distance, and then they all just start fading out. That already gave me goosebumps. And you gotta wonder here too, Ghost ran in with the Dothraki. I hope he's okay. Poor guy really gets no love anymore. But at this point in the episode, I actually had to pause it. What I learned from watching this type of episode is don't go and run to Cold Stone and get a huge tub of ice cream before, which I did, and I sporadically had to unleash in the bathroom about every 15 minutes in this episode. So that's your free life advice for the day. And what was so important about that happening to the Dothraki was it would set off Dany, seeing her men be obliterated like that, and make the whole plan they had flip, because Dany was like, screw this, I'm getting my dragon. And that's also going to make Jon follow her, because Jon's in love with her and wants to protect her. Their rash decisions worked in this battle for sure, but I'm not so sure how much these type of emotional choices are going to work in battle against a mastermind like Cersei. We shall find out. And when the dead first charge in here, that was really cool, because it made them come in like an ocean wave, where they were really high up top, so many bodies toppling over each other. And then Dany's dragon comes through, but they did really well with the dragons here. That's what impressed me a lot, because it wasn't overkill, and they were still constantly challenged throughout. And this army of the dead was constantly resilient too. Just when you thought you had them down, that wasn't the case. That's again how you do a war scene right, switching between little wins and little losses here and there. And there was already some pure eye candy here when there is a shot. Dany's dragon is torching up some of the dead, and that fire is actually lighting up the cloudy night sky. That was ridiculous. And then here, if you get your death pools out, our first casualty was Ed. He saved Sam, and he also importantly knocked Sam out of shell shock. And already they're showing you they were not afraid to get gory in this episode, which I always appreciate. I love really effective gore, and it was great here. And this battle blended CGI, gore, and hand-to-hand combat perfectly. Too much CGI can feel like a video game, but they didn't. What's so great about Game of Thrones is they never forget to give you those emotional punches with the real fighting down below. And I really appreciate the consistency and attention to details with each character here. They kept Jon not great at flying a dragon. He's only done it once before, and he was really sloppy doing it. I mean, him and his dragon were hitting into trees. They even hit into Dany and her dragon at one point. And I also love Mother Nature was a player in this war too. I didn't even think about that, where it's basically this blizzard going on. It's not even like Earth's on their side against the dead. And the blizzard made all this look even more interesting to the eye, especially with the dragons. It gave the dragons a challenge. And they stuck to how each army fights so brilliantly from what we've seen and how we got here, from Dothraki just going straight in. They're very straightforward fighters. And the sloppy Northerners in the middle just fighting the best they can in their own way, and the masterful craftsman at the back end, the Unsullied, always in sync. And I particularly love them in this episode. They were awesome, and they are a joy to watch. And let's talk about the score here. The music was probably the true MVP for me in this episode. The composer of the show is Ramin Djawadi, and he actually does Westworld for HBO as well. And to me, he did the best score I've seen in any battle scene in anything I've ever watched. That includes movies, TV shows. He was the one setting the emotional tone in each scene. This whole episode, he was carrying that weight, and he nailed it. And I really especially love the intensity of Melisandre now having to light the trenches with the Unsullied behind her. What an incredible shot. Very tense moment. And then they get it, and it's like this big win, but the dead are pure just survival instinct here, and they just topple on top of each other to put the fire out. They're so dumb, but their dumbness is brilliant in a way where they're not afraid of anything, and they'll do something like that. Again, just everything making total sense here and how people would react and what army would do what. And then they perfectly even reminded you that the Hound is still deathly afraid of fire, and this is the most fire he's probably ever been around, and that's completely triggering his PTSD, and really also at the same time sets up a nice connection he'd have with Arya, and how she visually gave him hope and saved him there. And then he saved her later on, which we'll delve into later. And I love the little dialogue they had in the crypt down below. They didn't forget about the brains of the whole operation. And Tyrion has this great line to Sansa, maybe we should have stayed married. And she says, wouldn't work. Dragon Queen would divide our loyalties. And Sansa's spitting this hot fire, but then Missandei has got her girls back and says without her we would be dead already. I love it. Little cat fight going on. And I really, really hope that my main prediction comes true in this episode. Fed it a little more that Tyrion and Sansa will be the last two standing, starting a democracy and fixing the world. So as much praise as I'm giving this episode, one of my qualms of the episode was what they've done with Bran here. He just pieced out and warged into a raven. But what was the point of that? We see the raven follows the Night King, and then that's really all we get. There wasn't a payoff with that. But I hold my reservations because I really don't think the show would just do that with no explanation. I think it's still setting up more of Bran's story to go, and there'll be more reveals with him. They made such a big point of this for it to not mean anything. We can't have Bran's story just end this simple and dull. So I'm, again, not going to hold that totally against this episode. That's something you have to wait and see on. So once the dead break through the trenches here and start climbing up the wall, it was nice homage to Lord of the Rings Battle at Helm's Deep when the orcs are all climbing up the wall. And the music, again, so good here with the fast ticking kicking in. And to me, this set looks beautiful at this point with it all being lit by fire. And to me, it also symbolized in a sense that they're literally in hell. And the biggest complaint I see about this episode from people is it being too dark, not being able to see what's on the screen. I completely disagree. I was able to make out everything I needed to, and I think it need to have obviously a darker visual tone because, again, this is possibly the last night for everybody, and it's the darkest night of all their existence. I think if they made it any more brighter on the screen, it wouldn't do the justice of the tone of the episode. I didn't at one point say, what just happened? I couldn't see it. If you did, turn up that brightness on the screen or make sure you're watching on a good, strong TV. But if that's your experience, that's your experience. I just didn't have a problem with it. And I really loved here, we finally got to see Jaime be a badass. All the talk we've had in the past about him fighting in wars, and we never got much of that until now. And I really love the shot of him fighting side by side with Brienne. They're defending the Stark castle, which is just incredible and crazy to think about. Some beautiful wide shots there. And then we go into Arya mode. She definitely has the best choreography of the episode. And look, she saved the Hound with her arrow earlier in the episode. Then, just from the sight of her, motivated him to keep going and fighting. Her positive energy is still just infectious as well. And then the Hound coming back and saving her in the hallway really is just a good payoff with their relationship. And Beric gets his big moment here as well. Dies a hero, which was great, especially because him and Arya had a lot of tension in the past, so he ended up saving her too, protecting her. And then Lady Mormont. This was a standout scene for me, clearly. Her getting picked up by that giant walker was disturbing as hell, but I thought it was great that Game of Thrones was staying true to form and giving a pure horror moment in this battle. And at the same time, giving Lady Mormont the most awesome way to go out of anybody in this episode, which was the show understanding that she is a huge fan favorite. Like the creators say, she was only supposed to be in one episode of the show. And they noticed the reaction to her was so overwhelming, they had to keep her going. And it was huge for her. It's this tiny warrior taking out this huge, terrifying giant. It was totally a David Goliath moment, and it was awesome. And the transitions here were really smooth. You're going from battles on the ground here up to the sky with the dragons, and they transition through the smoke and the blizzard really well. And then you get the money shot here of the dragons in front of a half moon. Wow. I mean, super fantasy nerds must have been drooling at that scene. After we get some nice eye candy with the dragons, we get a huge change of pace, and it becomes a straight up horror movie when we get in the library with Arya. I think a lot of detractors of this episode got ticked off at this point, felt it was too slow, but what I think you gotta understand is that war scenes in movies and shows come in all shapes and sizes, and I think this was a smart choice because it separated this battle from Battle of the Bastards and the Battle at the Wall and Hardhome. It was its own type of battle with its own pace, and it was a piece of art to me because it just blended so much different genres here and feelings and emotions, and it still let the soul of these characters keep carrying it over anything else. So I applaud it for that. And this scene was something straight out of a Walking Dead episode or Jurassic Park. And honestly, Maisie Williams just solidifies here her magical acting abilities. They lucked out so much with Maisie Williams as Arya because so many shows have child actors that just do not pan out. And when they become older, they just prove they're really not good actors. They were just cast for maybe their cuteness, but Maisie Williams could have not played Arya any better in this show, and that is so important. They never had to recast her or anything like that. And people say Arya is the MVP this episode, but I really think it was actually Maisie Williams who's the true MVP behind it all. So Melisandre's back, and she says to Arya basically that the Lord had brought Beric for a purpose. Now that purpose has been served to protect Arya, and they did this also well with Melisandre and Arya because there was a shot earlier in the episode, Melisandre makes a point of looking at Arya, knowing how she's really the true savior in her visions. And I love the line about closing the brown eyes, green eyes, and now the blue eyes, which is the Night King. And I think we can assume the green eyes is Cersei. And this all comes full circle with Arya because she, for a good portion of that battle, when she got in that library, became that frightened little Arya we knew from the beginning of this show again. But what sets her back into her new, confident, powerful ways is the line that changed her whole life, which is, what do we say to the god of death? Not today. And she would literally run to the god of death himself, the Night King. That is how you get a huge payoff from a character. Literally from season 1 they set that up. And it was perfect time in the episode they did this scene because they show her run off, and the show brilliantly makes us forget about her. So when she arrives for her big kill, it has way more weight and shock to it. So we see now Daenerys lighting up the Night King, the dragon fire. Doesn't work on him. Obviously that would be too easy. And we see Jon comes in this scene as well. And it sets up for a showdown between Jon and his arch rival, the Night King. But this was kind of a red herring here, which I thought worked because if you were going to give Arya this kill, it would be more surprising. I think everyone expected Jon to kill the Night King, so they kind of teased you there, but the Night King was like, you know what, I'll just have the dead take care of you. And he rises everybody from the dead, including the Crypts. So that theory came true. So I really love this sequence where it seems all hope is lost when these dead come back to life again. And the music is just spectacular here, and you're seeing the dead killing people in the Crypts, Dany's dragons getting mauled, and this all was so important to happen, and I'm so relieved they did it because so much of the army here on the good side was killed, and it's setting up perfectly to have a fair, more even fight against Cersei. You didn't want all these armies surviving because that would be overkill. And I just started tearing when Sansa and Tyrion had their moment here in the Crypts. Did anyone else feel like they were going to commit suicide for a second? I got that vibe for sure, but they didn't, thank God. But again, I'm telling you, it's going to be these two in the end. And can you have done Theon's scene any better? This man now staring death in the face in the Night King and doing the bravest thing a coward like him could do is running towards him. It was poetic, it was beautiful, and it was perfect that he got to hear Bran say thanks and that he's a good man. What a way to go out, and that forgiveness was what he really wanted. Man, and Theon's just like Jaime, and Arya, just an incredible character arc in this show. So satisfying. From loving him to hating him, from being a traitor to being the most loyal, and from really becoming a coward, doing the bravest thing ever. Wow. And then you see the Night King next to Bran, and you think, oh, maybe we're going to get that Night King reveal of maybe him working with the Night King or him being the Night King, especially because we know he warged out of there, but not the case. So again, I just really hope we get some explanation to Bran and his story and what's really going on with him as we move forward. Otherwise, that would be super disappointing. And Arya gets the awesome kill. And when The Night King chokes her. I thought he had her for a second, but she drops that dagger like a boss, catches it, and saves the day, killing the Night King, which kills everybody that was on the army of the dead. And it was perfectly synced right before Jon was going to get burned alive by a dragon. What a powerful kill that is. And credit to two people on Twitter. The first one I saw being that Arya with the dagger there at the end, her dropping and catching it. You actually see her practice that move against Brienne last season when she has a little session with Brienne. So that training paid off. Practice makes perfect. And Bran, everyone thought that dagger he gave to her was just for Littlefinger. But now we know Bran probably knew further into the future, knew that would be the end of the Night King, giving it to Arya. So, wow. And just another beautiful scene was Gore going out here in the perfect way he should, protecting his queen. And the acting on Jorah's face going out was priceless. The look of love he gave Dany. And if there's any way he'd want to go out, it would be that. And it was awesome just seeing the dragon comforting Dany here. Really, really emotional moment. Oh man, and just ending on a nice, beautiful visual touch of Melisandre walking right out to the dawn like she said she was going to die before dawn, timing it perfectly, committing suicide by letting go of her necklace, letting herself finally die of old age, completing her redemption arc, and her actually doing good for humans. Okay, so I really thought they made all the right choices in this episode, pending what they do with Bran. We can't call that yet. But a big complaint I've seen is how they killed the Night King, how he was able to be ended so easy, and that there wasn't enough big players killed here. But I think it was the perfect choice because at the end of the day, the White Walker story with the Night King has always been the backdrop of the show. Episode 1 set that up, but it was never the main focus. The main focus and our main soul of the show is the conflict with Cersei versus the Starks, and now Cersei versus everybody else. So I'm happy they've given Cersei, the true villain, the main stage to end this show. You knew this was going to happen anyway because we knew the Battle of Winterfell would be midway through this season. So they knew right away Cersei's getting that ending showdown. That's where the true emotional weight is. That's the revenge we want, right? That goes back to Ned's head getting cut off. That has nothing to do with the White Walker. So they kind of got him out of the way, and I think it was justice. I think he needed to be the straightforward kill. And not only do we still have a Cersei showdown to go, I believe they've set up now a Jon versus Dany and something crazy in that spectrum because we have 3 episodes still left that are all an hour and a half each. It's a lot of screen time still. So you need a lot of these big players still left to go, and I'm sure a lot of them are still going to get a lot of death happening to them. I mean, now we're depleted of an army on the good side versus Cersei, who's ready to go, and she's going to have this golden army, which I think is going to be crazy. I think they're going to be crazy fighters, all of them. I think we're going to see those elephants. And this sets up that Clegane Bowl we were all waiting for with the Mountain versus the Hound. He's still alive, and he's going south. So I think these next episodes are going to be even crazier. And I think this Night King story was the cut and dry kind of version we saw coming. But I think that was to lay out the Cersei story, and that outcome not going to be as cut and dry. I don't think it's just going to be straightforward and Arya getting her, killing her, and everyone's happy. Especially because they're really reminding us how crazy Dany is going. So they have to also address the throne issue with her and Jon. So I think it's going to be a lot of surprises are coming our way. This whole episode was beautiful to me. It was a work of art. It was original. I can't think of any battle like it. And it was beautiful to look at. And it changed the Game of War scenes. And honestly, somehow through that all, it still made the characters the main focus. And of course, MVPs, Arya, Lady Mormont, and the composer. Again, I think my favorite thing this whole episode was the music. Carried everything. He needs more praise. But yes, I'm going to give this episode a 9.8. Very high. I loved it. It hit all my expectations, and it's set up for what I think is going to be an equally as crazy episode next week. And it's time for Cersei, and I cannot wait. Let me know what you thought of this episode down below. I love to hear your thoughts. I read every comment and try to respond as many as I can. Please subscribe so you don't miss one of my reviews of Game of Thrones. Please follow me at SteveVarley1 on Twitter and Instagram for more of me. And I'll see you next time.